Hello and welcome to another episode of the Bitcoin News Show right here on the World Crypto Network. Thanks, guys, so much for joining us again on this beautiful Sunday afternoon, where our ritual is every Sunday to talk Bitcoin. We got a lot of stuff to talk about with Bitcoin today. We're going to be talking about Coinbase, Coinbase and SegWit, right? South Korea, regulations, Lightning, and of course, Ivy, the smart contract IDE for Bitcoin to be able to write smart contracts on Bitcoin. So I'm really excited to talk about all this cool stuff, guys. Lightning, smart contracts, side chains. We got all sorts of stuff to go into today. So it's going to be super fun. So before we do that, let me go ahead and just give you guys a few announcements, and then we'll go ahead with the introduction. So first, just wanted to issue a PSA, a public warning, of course, about the @Bitcoin Twitter account. There's a few people that already know and have figured out that this account has been purchased or hacked or whatever you want to call it at this point by the Bcash people. It is 100% tweeting out lies and all sorts of horrible things that we don't want anybody to really take as serious. So please, guys, make sure you tweet that out. The @Bitcoin account, no longer for Bitcoin. Then we got SegWit support being merged into the core wallet. So the actual request from Peter Woolley was, the pull request from Peter Woolley was there, and I believe it's been merged now. So there was a couple of exchanges, might have been Kraken, that were actually waiting before they implement SegWit to have SegWit implemented into the core wallet. So now that's been merged. So really excited about that. It's going to help SegWit support grow like crazy. So really excited to hear that. And then I don't know if you guys saw, but the KFC campaign, pretty interesting. We might have to ask Francis about this, but KFC Canada actually live streamed on their Facebook account all day long a bucket of chicken with the price of a bucket of chicken of what the Bitcoin price of it was right in the center. So you guys could all day long stare at a bucket of chicken and the price of it in Bitcoin. So it was really, really cool. They tweeted some hilarious stuff, you guys. It was a really great campaign. I hope more and more people check this out. I mean, it was really good. I really encourage. I got the links, of course, guys, for you to check out in the show notes for that. And then the final announcement is there's been an amazing Lightning infographic that's been floated out there. I forget the creator now, but I do have the link in the show notes to that as well. Highly recommend everybody take a look at that, because that really clears up a lot of the FUD, a lot of the misunderstandings of how Lightning works. Basically, the biggest things it clears up is it really shows you that Lightning acts like a hot wallet, just like a regular old hot wallet. There's no having to open channels specifically to one person to another person. No bi-directional channels. No, it's an actual network, and it's really, really, really fast. So I really encourage everybody to check out this Lightning infographic. Again, links are in the show notes. So let's start introducing our guests. We have amazing panelists, guys. Amazing panelists here today, guys. I'm really excited to introduce these people. A couple of these people you know, maybe a couple you don't, but really, really excited. So first, let's introduce Mr. Paul Storts, otherwise known as Paul Sports in the community, as we lovingly call him, Mr. Paul Sports of Drive Chain Technology, who has recently just released a BIP, recently released a BIP for everybody to check out about Drive Chains, and trying to get that, try to get more attention and more awareness about that, which is a pretty interesting thing, because side chains and drive chains, I think, are going to be pretty big this year. So Paul, how you doing? And hit the unmute button.
Yeah, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on the show. I'm really excited. I just had to pull request the BIP into the directory, but just like working on a ton of things at the moment, and I just wanted to be perfect before. But yes, and then I'll get the number, and so it's really close. And the other thing is Cryptex Patrick. He's been rebasing the because we were obviously while we were working on the speed of innovation in Bitcoin is so extreme and uncontrollable that while we were working on Drive Chain, we were working obviously on the most recent release of Bitcoin at the time. But while we were doing that, millions of people from around the world, or hundreds, were improving Bitcoin, and they made it to a new release. And so we have to rebase, of course, which because there's been so much progress, it's taking a long time. Is a really nice way of putting it.
We understand, man. Software development isn't easy, people. Yeah. Software development isn't easy, and it's never, ever finished. Very, very important to understand. So we thank you, Paul, for that, and we look forward to the BIP for more and more people to be able to check that out and be exposed to Drive Chains. Very cool stuff. All right, Mr. Francis Pouliot over there in Canada, coming to us live again. How you doing? How you doing, Francis?
Yeah, I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me again. I mean, like everyone in Bitcoin, I think we all had a crazy week, so there's lots to talk about. So I've been spending the last week mostly mining in the mining industry, but also working on some cool PGP stuff and Lightning stuff that I think we may talk about later.
Yes, very cool stuff, Francis. In the Bitcoin Entrepreneur, ladies and gentlemen, with Cadillac.com and Bills, highly recommend everybody check it out. As well as Francis recently brought more attention to his Canadian Senate video. Everybody knows that Andreas Antonopoulos went to the Canadian Senate to testify, but not a whole lot of people has seen Francis's. So I really encourage everybody to check out Francis's testimony. Very professional, very, very, very proud to have him represent Bitcoin for Canada there. So really cool, guys. Check that out. And finally, last but not least, our very, very special guest today, ladies and gentlemen. We got Mr. Daniel here, Daniel Robinson from Chain. How you doing, Daniel?
Great. Yeah, and thanks for having me on, Vortex.
Awesome, man. Really, really, really happy and excited to have you here. Really excited to get your opinions on some of the topics here, but also really excited to dive into Ivy, which is the main reason why I have you on here today, Daniel. Really excited to see what you're working on with that and smart contracts on Bitcoin, right? They say it can't be done, but it can be done, people. I assure you. It's going to be good stuff, guys. So, all right, let's go. Let's get right into it, to the first topic then. Should be a good time. Listen, guys, we had an amazing petition, this week that just kind of took off, went a little bit viral. We have over 11,000 signatures on it that we just wanted Brian to kind of confirm, Brian Armstrong of Coinbase. We just kind of wanted to confirm what's going on with SegWit and what's going on with these batching of transactions, And so we finally got a tweet out of him at the end of the week. I believe it was Friday, yesterday or day before yesterday. So he finally tweeted out and let everybody know that they are working on SegWit and they are working on batching transactions, and he wants us all to bear with him, right? So we'll see if we can do that, because he did announce that he was working on SegWit over a year ago, but we really hope that at this point he really means it, right? Because the network really needs SegWit, and so we really hope that he can do that. So let me just ask you, Daniel, what are your thoughts so far on kind of Coinbase taking its time? Is this what you found in general? That companies take this long to implement SegWit? Because I have known a couple other smaller companies that were able to do it. So maybe you can tell us, is it technical? Is it political? And what are your views on SegWit in general in the ecosystem?
Sure. So I will say, personally, so we'll talk about later, Ivy is built entirely on SegWit and only uses SegWit contracts and SegWit transactions. And I found it to be actually really enjoyable to work with and not that hard. As far as creating SegWit transactions and spending them. That said, I think there's a big difference between building something, what the Ivy Playground is, which is currently entirely in the browser, and which doesn't even yet support testnet, and upgrading something that's right now live and controlling a lot of customer money. And I think it's sort of, I'm not that surprised that it's taken them a decent amount of time to implement it. It's a little surprising because all the costs fall on them for the most part. I mean, there's some negative externalities from rising transaction fees, but you'd think they'd be relatively well motivated. But I think for them that the extra costs that they have to pay for transaction fees or for orphan UTXOs just aren't necessarily worth risking sort of a catastrophic event or something. So again, I would have, if I ran Coinbase, I would have prioritized that probably over stuff like adding Bitcoin Cash. But I think you'd still see a pretty long development cycle, at least in my opinion.
Yeah. So from your point of view, it doesn't seem too difficult to implement SegWit into your technology stack. I mean, obviously it's not easy, right? You need to be a developer, but at the same time, we've seen smaller companies like yours and a bunch of other companies like Chain, and then of course like Zodica and a couple other small Bitcoin companies. Even Bill's, Francis's company. Pretty much all implement SegWit before Coinbase.
Yeah, I mean, I actually don't know what their software are. I don't know if they're using Bitcoin, if they use Bitcoin Core. But perhaps again, sort of waiting for the GUI wallet merges there. Although, I mean, my guess is though they have probably the most complex infrastructure of any Bitcoin company right now, just because they're dealing with so many payments. It's probably a lot of it is technical debt, I'd imagine, from decisions they should have made earlier about how exactly to manage the infrastructure. But I don't know. I find it hard to second guess someone when they're dealing with those kind of infrastructural challenges.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, that's really important key to understand. A key point to understand is that Coinbase is a huge player in the ecosystem. And so because of that, a huge responsibility kind of falls onto them, especially when we see the chart in real time, right? The mempool start to drop when they go offline. And so I think, I think it's really up to Coinbase here to really take advantage of their position and help the ecosystem by implementing SegWit as soon as possible. Let's go to Francis next and get his thoughts on this. What are your thoughts, Francis, on the mempool being thought to be spammed basically by Coinbase at this point from their technology choices? And then what are your thoughts on Brian Armstrong implementing SegWit? Are we going to really see SegWit this time?
Yeah, well, I agree with Dan in the sense that they must have a lot of technical debt, and it's probably much easier for me to implement SegWit in my payments processor than Coinbase. But that being said, I mean, when you look at the evidence of how many transactions they're doing, we saw earlier this year there was this traceability kind of study which showed that they had a huge amount of very small inputs being kind of locked and unspendable. This is a form of technical debt that they're living with today. So I mean, I do understand that it can take some time, and they would be, it wouldn't be something political for them. I don't think that because the cost of them not implementing SegWit is so high. I mean, I think we're talking about probably multiple hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars, per day of optimization that they could be doing. And when I look back of what they've been doing for the past few years, stuff that would really save them millions of dollars include, for example, Schnorr signatures, right? When you receive, Coinbase must receive a ton of tiny inputs. When you're signing that off, imagine if instead of having like 150 signatures in your transaction, you only had one, your transaction would probably be, 10 times, 20 times smaller than it is right now or something like that. When you look at coin selection algorithms, when you look at the way they calculate fees, I mean, it seems to me to be very amateurish and unsophisticated, kind of like they're relying on a stack they built a long time ago and they're hesitant to touch it. Not too dissimilar to legacy financial institutions that have this technical debt and don't want to touch the core of their infrastructure. So I mean, I mean, it's good for everybody that they're thinking about batching transactions and doing SegWit. But I'll believe it when I see it.
Absolutely. I mean, we've seen this time and time again when companies get to be too large. They do have taken on at that point a bunch of technical debt, right? They're no longer like this lean startup that can just go and change everything. And then unfortunately for Coinbase, they made some terrible decisions early on. Both Coinbase and GDAX actually kind of running their whole infrastructure off of AWS. Just don't see that as a good idea. I mean, sure, AWS is great, for an e-commerce site, but I just don't know that you want to hook that up to be your trading engine. That just doesn't seem prudent when you look at the precedents that's been set before that for financial softwares from larger institutions. So let's go with Paul, Mr. Paul Stortz, and get your thoughts on the conversation so far and Coinbase implementing SegWit.
Well, yeah, I think it's everyone. There's a lot of piling on always. Like someone is the 2 minutes hate, and people don't. Which it's really interesting. The Bitcoin community, and that's something I love about the Bitcoin community, is that the standards are just so high, and everyone always wants more, and they want it now. And that's great. I think that's great. Honestly, that's the attitude everyone should have, because that's optimization, right? We should be able, unless it's forbidden by the laws of physics, we should be getting everything as soon as we possibly can. So, but it is kind of funny to take a step back and compare, like what if we were asking like Bank of America to implement like something that would just like never happen?
We would never, dude. We would never get anything done if we asked an actual corporation like Bank of America to do something.
Yeah, and so corporations get large, and then they have a problem. I mean, I think no one. You mentioned Exotica. I don't think anyone's trying to like hack Exotica. I don't know how much. I tried to look up like how much money does Coinbase have on its books on any given day. And we know that the history of exchanges being hacked is tremendous, and then it's just so hard to recover. Although other exchanges, Bitfinex, sometimes people recover, sometimes it's an inside job. See, that's the other thing. You hire a lot of employees. Is it going to be an inside job, So you try to upgrade your hot wallet or something, which is what is required in this case. And you know, I don't envy that person's job. I really feel like you need to have like video cameras everywhere on it. It's like, I don't even know how I would even begin to try and do it on a big team. You'd almost have to like just start from scratch and audit that thing and then just try to click it over or something. I don't know. I'm not an expert in this particular area of a large enterprise upgrading their software, but I imagine it would be very, very difficult. Ironically, DriveChain, I hate to make everything about myself, but I had to solve the UTXO problem was one I had to solve, because if you think about it, you got an algorithm that is watching for deposits from main chain to side chain. And if you don't do it properly, you'll end up with the exact same problem where all of a sudden a bunch of people have moved the money in one direction, main to side, and then someone wants to withdraw from the side chain. So you have to build a transaction that selects those and pays from the side chain back to the main chain. So it's actually the same problem. And I was solving it, I think, last January, 12 months ago. So it's very interesting that it's just all the same. If anyone's interested, the way you have to solve it with a program, you have no human insight or ability to respond. So I have it so that every person, there's only one output at any given one time. When you deposit, they all roll. They roll together. And so there's like, you are paying for the previous person's dust, and you get your dust for free. And so it sort of cancels out. But that's just very ironic that.
Yeah, to Coinbase's credit, you know, it's true they haven't really been hacked yet, and that we know of course, publicly. But yeah, you're right, Paul. I mean, it's you know, we don't have any insight into exactly like how Coinbase's technology stack works and things like that. It's just we just hope that this time Brian comes through on his word about actually implementing SegWit, because it's more important than ever, right? As the fees continue to rise, because people find using Bitcoin valuable. You know, the fees will continue to rise, right? As long as people continue to find it more and more valuable.
You know, I agree with Francis that it's interesting. Like, why don't they want to do it? Because it's their money, but maybe they can just pass the cost on to the consumer. I mean, we really don't know. Maybe they're really worried about, you know, they've been dealt this winning hand, right? They get all this growth. You know, this is everyone's dream, is to do the Silicon Valley unicorn and get users. You know, all these people, they build all this stuff and then there's no users. And then they're so sad because no one likes their company or whatever. And then now they can't hire customer service agents fast enough. And they're just doing all this and that. And it's just like, but I think it's great. People should want more. SegWit is really hard. If you had to like audit it, like I wouldn't want to do it like a 0 day. You know what I mean? If someone said, okay, SegWit just came out and you have to install it now, like 2 weeks
right
from now.
Yeah, we don't want to do that. We don't want to do that. I mean,
go to hell. But instead, now that you've seen all these different companies have installed it successfully and there's no disaster has happened yet, now you can kind of just be like, okay, just merge in whatever they did and we'll just copy it and whatever. So
yeah, absolutely. At this point, there's kind of no, I agree, Paul. At this point, there's kind of no excuse left, because there's been so many people that have actually implemented SegWit now at this point. So we're really excited to see more and more companies, you know, get this implemented. This is really going to save the network a lot on fees. So I think, does anybody else have anything on this topic before we move on?
Yeah, but sorry, go ahead, Daniel.
We'll have Francis go, and then we'll have Daniel go.
Yeah, so just a quick comment. I mean, if they're going to concentrate on, you know, onboarding users and doing good customer support and doing the Silicon Valley thing, I mean, that's perfectly fine. That's a good business strategy. If I was CEO of Coinbase, I would probably outsource all of the wallet and all of the Bitcoin infrastructure to another third-party company, because clearly they're either not motivated or skillful to do it themselves. I mean, they had a lot of time to do. I mean, they've been in Bitcoin for a long time. I mean, they know all sorts of engineers on optimization strategies. Clearly, they didn't have the capacity to do that. And I mean, if they're gonna be so terrible at the Bitcoin tech and not an example to follow, that's perfectly okay. But they shouldn't meddle in Bitcoin governance and politics, and, you know, be the driving force behind big blocks and always kind of trash talk, which they did publicly and at private events, very kind of harshly, the Bitcoin core developers and stuff. So, I mean, you got to make a choice, right? If you're not going to be an example to follow and you're always going to kind of criticize, you know, kind of just, you know, focus on your onboarding of users and stop screwing with, you know, our process.
Wow. Could not agree more, Francis. Absolutely. Very well put. Let's go to Daniel. Go ahead, Daniel, give us your thoughts.
So yeah, no, I think I appreciate that point and everything else you made, but I do think we went back and forth about this on Twitter a little bit, Vortex, and a point that Paul made is that there are fundamental technical challenges here that are very hard to solve. So specifically, yeah, with the UTXO dust problem, it's very hard to allow small deposits in a UTXO-based system in a way that doesn't incur a lot of fees, of these sort of extra fees in order to end up merging them. As far as batching transactions going out, that's something obviously that I think that Coinbase needs to do, but it also requires, I think it requires doing a lot of changes live. So there's the fact that it's very large, the fact that these are, some of them may be sort of fundamental limitations on exactly what they can do. But in general, the stuff that Coinbase has excelled at, like user interface, and as of recently, I think support, although they were pretty bad at that up until relatively recently. But these are one notable thing about these is that these are the things that are most missing in Bitcoin, and reliability, not getting hacked. These are to some degree, I think, why they become such a central player in it, and why I appreciate it. And I hate to say this on air because now my phone number is going to get hacked, but I hold most of my crypto in Coinbase, in vaults in Coinbase, and it's because I trust them. They're the only crypto exchange where I've been to their offices and know that they are like sort of a bunch of people and not just one Ukrainian hacker in a basement. And I think it's worth giving them credit for these things. And every company has strengths and weaknesses. And I'd say some of their weaknesses in terms of contributing to the Bitcoin protocol and some of what they've done there are sort of inevitably because their focus has been on other places.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, there is some big, huge whales, that do hold their coin, for example, in like Zappo vaults, right, and Coinbase vaults. These people have like very, 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 very. Because remember, we have like hundreds of thousands of years, basically, right, of protecting physical things. So we know how to do that really well, right? So Zappo and Coinbase vault are kind of taking advantage of that 100 plus or 1,000 plus years of basically physically securing something, and kind of trying to take that to the Bitcoin, right? Because their keys are just all over the world and things like that. So some people feel like that's more secure. And when you have when you have a lot of Bitcoin, maybe that's the best route for you. Personally, of course, I prefer using Trezors and backing up seeds and kind of doing it myself and things like that. But hey, to each their own. And it's true. It's just such a great point, Daniel, about the reliability. Because the ecosystem itself was just so adamant. Or there was a lot of people in the ecosystem that were so adamant about these big blocks, right? Like these big companies specifically, right? Like Coinbase and a couple other large companies. When we have this huge influx of users, right? Bitcoin keeps working and they all go down. It's very ironic. And I just hope that people realize and understand this and see this. Like, look, all of these companies that were pushing for these big blocks for saying Bitcoin wasn't reliable, they're the ones that go down with influx of users, not Bitcoin. Now, of course, Bitcoin had the mempool went up a bit, right? But the blocks kept being created every 10 minutes and Bitcoin kept going. So very, very important. And we hope that companies like Coinbase and these other companies really see this last run up and really upgrade their infrastructure, because it's just the beginning, guys. It's going to get real crazy this year. I think in 2018, everybody's expecting a pretty big boom, at least another couple of bull runs for this year, both in the alts and in Bitcoin, I think, because we're just so early. People are expecting like 3% by the end of the year of the planet to be fully into crypto. And even that, of course, is still early days. So we're really excited about what's going to happen this year. Thanks so much, guys, for your information on this topic. I think we can go ahead and move on to the next topic. Before we do that, if everybody could just give us a thumbs up if you like what you see. If not, maybe give us a thumbs down. We'll try to improve. But if you guys are new here, please subscribe to the World Crypto Network and hit that subscribe button. We just went over, I think, 50,000 subscribers, which is pretty awesome. Also, we've been running a live stream of our old content recently on the World Crypto Network. So we've got a couple of live streams there. I think we've done a couple of tests, about 3 or 4 different tests, where we actually live stream our pre-recorded content, because we have years of content on the World Crypto Network that people can really just learn so much from. There's just so much good information in there that we have, and just years of it. So we hope that that this is benefiting some people. So guys, if you want to check that out, please go to the World Crypto Network YouTube channel and check out the live stream. So let's go ahead and move on to our next topic about South Korea. So some kind of crazy stuff came out, you guys. You know, it's really it's unfortunate that we have these terrible language barriers where it's just so hard to get information out, you know, between country to country, and there's all sorts of things. We have companies like Reuters that report on crazy things like all these exchanges getting raided. And when of course all that actually happened that we've come to find out now was that no, the government was just checking on a few things, right? They were just doing what governments do, which is going to the exchange, asking for information, asking for statistics, right? Because that's what governments do. And so, basically kind of the same thing repeating of what happened to China. And then before that in the US, the government regulates, or they come in, they ask questions, they shut a few things down first, then they regulate it, they bring it back up, and then business as usual. So I'm pretty curious to see from the panelists if they think that is also the case. So let's go first with Daniel. Daniel, I'm not sure how much you've heard about the whole crazy South Korean thing, but there was early reports of things getting raided, and then we found out that no, it was actually not getting raided, and in fact there is no actual ban on cryptocurrencies at all, and so in South Korea. So Dan, maybe give us your thoughts on this craziness.
Yeah, sure. So I've been following it a little. So I used to be a securities lawyer. So a lot of the regulatory side of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency is interesting to me. My sort of guess, and I'm at the risk of looking stupid if it goes another way. I think a lot of people are worried about the crash in crypto being caused by government interference and a ban, and I think it's going to go in the other way. I think the other direction. I think it's going to follow the crash. So whenever we inevitably do get a relatively large crash, certainly in the largest crypto space or in Bitcoin or Ethereum, that's when governments are going to be motivated and interested in going and trying to find who are the victims, who are the perpetrators, who are going to crack down on. Right now, in South Korea, there's a lot of demand. People are getting rich. People love buying crypto. There isn't really that much incentive for the government to go out on a limb and stop people from doing something that they really enjoy doing. After it inevitably crashes, I think it's gonna look somewhat different. So that's what I would be worried about more than crackdown causing a crash. I'd be worried about what's gonna happen after a crash and once there's sort of more public demand for regulation of cryptocurrency.
Yep. Very good points. Yeah, we saw that the government kind of didn't care, right, until a few people started complaining from the various fiascos that we've seen with BitThumb, the exchange down there in South Korea. So let's go with Paul next on this. Paul, what are your thoughts on the recent South Korean news of these exchanges?
Oh my God, it's so funny. Well, I think by far the most interesting thing. Well, first of all, I agree. I think that Bitcoin is anti-fragile, and the experiment won't really begin until you have people like the Russian or Chinese government or someone trying to suppress the currency. And I think we've already had many years where people could learn about it kind of safely and get involved and do a lot of productive work, which is great because I think enough work has been done. I really think I'd go as far as to say as sidechains and Lightning are just the last two pieces. They're all we could want, and then once that's finished, it will be totally anti-fragile and basically indestructible. But in general, I don't really care if South Korea wants to kind of throw their weight around and say that no one can do this or that and everything's banned. But I think by far the more interesting thing is that they failed to get anywhere near that almost completely, and then there was a public uprising, and they called for the person to get thing, and now they're issuing apologies, and that I think speaks to something that is underappreciated about Bitcoin and money in general. Money is very mysterious, but it's money is sort of psychological. It has this property of being recognizable, so it's not. There are certain things about money that are very tractable and very easy to understand, a little more softer. But what I'm trying to say is that we have an interesting kind of cultural phenomenon here. We have all this stuff that's all this ICO mania, as well as Bitcoin mania, as well as just tech enthusiasm, or maybe dissatisfaction with institutions. It's like a Trump Brexit type phenomenon. There's all these little kind of forces, and then is that this has wired itself into people's brains, and they are pro Bitcoin now, and they are there's a pro Bitcoin electorate. What when did that happen? That happened you just wake up and you see something weird like that. So that's, I think, the weirdest part about it, and the part that I think people should talk and think about more. If Francis has a point.
Well, yeah, absolutely. No, it's yeah. I mean, people don't understand. I mean, one day they're going to wake up and their bank won't work. One day they're going to wake up and they won't be able to get cash out of their debit card. We've seen this happen in several countries, and people think it can never happen to them. But
in Italy, you have the limits. They're like the one that you can't withdraw more than 1,000 or something. And even like eventually enough more, and the $10,000 limit. The world is a constantly changing place, and more people will find that to be annoying as people travel more and as inflation creeps up in the sort of the amounts that people are using. I don't know exactly what it is, but it's something like you can't withdraw more than 1,000 euros.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's the financial restraints they put in place.
It's not like you're not like in Madagascar or something. You're like
absolutely agree. This was a big country. This was and India as well, right? So we've seen this play out in Italy, India, and these are pretty big, huge countries. I mean, come on, people. These are millions and millions of people, and in India, billions of people. So this stuff can definitely happen. And see what I kind of found in South Korea is that from reading people's tweets is that it kind of appeared that Bitcoin is too big to fail over there. There was reports of so many people being actually in cryptocurrency and positive about people being in cryptocurrency, that it seemed like they had no desire at all to ban it, shut it down, or push it out. They want to embrace it. And so we've seen things like this with Japan, where we get scared at first, and then all of a sudden, they see it as legal tender. So it's really interesting to see that that Bitcoin became too big to fail so quickly in South Korea, and I think that's going to be the case more and more as we go on, as we go further and further down the timeline. I think that Bitcoin will be increasingly too big to fail, which is absolutely amazing to see, right? When we've come from such humble and small roots. And I believe that financial minister, I think it was the financial minister that is the one that got the petition against them, and there was like over 30,000 signatures. So that's how powerful that's how many people want cryptocurrency in their, in the country. Like this is thousands and thousands of people, and this isn't slowing down anytime soon. So let's go with Francis and get your thoughts on this so far about maybe Bitcoin being too big to fail already down there in South Korea, and of the events of the week that happened in South Korea.
Yes. So I'm really happy that Paul brought up the Bitcoin electorate, because this is obviously to me the biggest story of the South Korea story. Just to kind of clear things regarding the actual things happening in South Korea. So if you're a money service business, you do have surprise inspections all the time. They just come in and see if your employees are kind of following the compliance rulebook and that your policies are up to date. And it's almost like, there's stuff you have to do, like keep a log of like the trainings that you've done, and they just physically come in and check out. So I don't think it's any big deal. But I've been over Christmas, I've seen around me, I know people that know what kind of the cypherpunk movement is about, people that know some early Bitcoin adopters that are still here. You can look at behind me the kind of paintings on the wall, and you can see kind of like what I'm looking for. Like I'm looking for this huge, massive socioeconomic disruption brought about by Bitcoin. And then what I've kind of noticed is that with the, just to give it a little bit of context, if you want to think about, political change and the potential crackdowns on Bitcoin and stuff like that, you need to learn a little bit about public choice theory. And I'm sure Paul knows. Paul, do you know a little bit about public choice? It's very closely related to kind of game theory applied to, I guess, the political process. So I think Paul would agree that a bit of public choice theory reading would help you understand a very important concept, which is the return on investment of violence by a government. So basically, if the government goes to crack down on Bitcoin or something like that, you need to conceive the government as the politicians first, as rational actors in a marketplace that are trying to maximize their benefits. They're also dealing with bureaucracies and entrenched interests. And the politician essentially has a very short kind of time span where he just wants to get reelected. So when you look about where Bitcoin adoption is right now, I told it on the last show, the last Ontario Securities Commission study that they published estimated that 6 to 7% of all Ontarians owned cryptocurrency. That's about 1 million people in Ontario that own cryptocurrency. If you do that pro rata, and there's no reason to believe for me that Vancouver and Montreal would be different, even maybe more, you have about 2 million Bitcoiners. And there's something that happens, and the Bitcoiners there's a lot of people that are extremely influential that have Bitcoins. A lot of businesses have Bitcoins. A lot of politicians personally own Bitcoins. Their families and friends own Bitcoins as advisors, own Bitcoin. So you have kind of this cast of really wide amount of people that have Bitcoin. And when you have Bitcoin, your mind transforms. You really become enlightened in a way. And people that understand their Bitcoin have this instinct within them that they're precious, that they somehow need to keep them safe. And like, as the price of Bitcoin goes up, they start to understand, the deflationary aspect, or the lack of too much inflation in Bitcoin, and they start to understand. And you have this hodler mentality that sets in, and what is that if the government cracks down on Bitcoin, that's just bad for you, right? If you have Bitcoins, if the government cracks down on Bitcoin, it's going to make your life less useful. And usually, if you're a Bitcoiner, Bitcoin kind of becomes a huge part of your life and your identity to some degree. So you have this really radical, intolerant minority that most people they don't really. There's no like people marching down the street to like shut down Bitcoin exchanges. But if you shut down Bitcoin exchanges, you'll have people marching down the street to reopen the Bitcoin exchanges, right? To unban the Bitcoin exchanges, because people that have Bitcoins have so much more to lose than people that don't have Bitcoin to gain, other than obviously the kind of entrenched interests like financial institutions that they have a lot to lose, which is why they're doing the lobbying. So, I mean, as you can see, right, the Minister of Justice, I think it was the Minister of Justice issued this thing, and clearly for him, there was not much to gain, because I don't know who he was making happy. I'm assuming it's some of the financial institutions that he's buddy with, but I mean, clearly he made a lot more people unhappy. So the signal that was sent to South Korea is that it's politically a loser move. You will lose more if you attack the Bitcoin community, because they're going to be more outspoken and vocal, and these people are powerful individuals that have a lot of money now. So yeah, it's a huge. I see the Bitcoin electorate becoming an actual thing. Maybe not in about 6 years, I would say, kind of the next election cycle, not the next one, maybe the one after that. And what I was saying on Twitter is that eventually some nations are going to be doing some arbitrage, right? You have some nations where the pro rata of Bitcoiners is hugely more than others. Like, you can think of Canada, but I was thinking the other day about Slovenia, where Bitstamp is from, and like how the founder of Bitstamp in Slovenia is some superstar over there. He's super wealthy. He's really well known. So you got these small countries. Imagine, for example, that the EU goes under the leadership of France, right, of Macron, goes to kind of try and regulate the digital economy, which is what they want to do. You'll have some states like some smaller states where it's going to be more politically winner for them to not oppose Bitcoin because of their intolerant Bitcoin voting constituency. So, I have like goosebumps right now. I'm kind of I'm pumping myself right now as a Bitcoin maximalist and looking forward to hyper-Bitcoinization. So take what I'm saying with a grain of salt. But yeah, I think it's definitely something that's real, and we've seen it. Kind of a first testament with the South Korean thing, with the minister backtracking, and we can expect that to kind of keep happening. Just look at what's happening with Hungary, right? They have a huge stash of Bitcoins. Now they're claiming they don't. Whatever happens, some states, it's becoming harder. And as Paul said, I'm happy that we've had this whole time, because the state oppression has been really, really mild. I mean, it's just been like kind of this central banks issuing these statements and kind of governments doing inquiries, and you had the bit license, but it's really not that bad. And by the time by the time that we were fragile, we've already contaminated enough people to have this kind of layer of protection around us. So I think we're in really good shape.
Absolutely. I mean, I've never seen Bitcoin so unified before. I mean, some of the people in the Ethereum camp are like, oh, Bitcoin is still, the community is still healing after the Bcash split. And it's like, nah, no, man. I've never seen Bitcoin more united. I've never seen Bitcoin healthier. I mean, the hash power is up to record levels as always. I mean, continuing to rise. The interest continues to rise. And yeah, it's just absolutely amazing, the power of hodlers. Like, people don't realize yet. Maybe at least most people don't realize how powerful these people are going to be. The hodlers will be the ones that are going to inherit the earth, people. As hyper Bitcoinization continues to take on, there's only ever going to be 21 million coins. I mean, there's only like 1 million coins in float, like across exchanges on the planet at any given time. So this is people understand when they get some, they understand that it's so precious and that it's so rare. And continuing to get more rare. So very, very, very cool, guys. Very awesome points. Does anybody have any final points on this topic before we move on?
Okay. Yeah, very quickly, I don't want to take too much time, Vortex. But what you said is really important, is that Bitcoin hodlers will be extremely rich and powerful in the future. And in this position, these are going to be the people that have influence over political parties, and the kind of hodler ideologies, I think, are going to slowly seep into the mainstream, just because kind of the new elite is going to have this whole new kind of ideology, cypherpunk, deflationary, self-sovereign, kind of this, and they're going to be vindicated in themselves and want to share that and make it more viral. So in 20 years, I think the kind of opt-in, opt-out mentality, the concept of forking away from a consensus if you don't agree, this kind of new way to conceive governance mechanisms. So this is why it's super interesting to study this now, because if hyper-Bitcoinization comes to pass, it's almost guaranteed that the ideologies of the cypherpunks that hold all the Bitcoins will be slowly seeping into the mainstream discourse.
Absolutely. Paul, I saw you laughing over there, Paul, when we started talking about Bitcoiners taking over the world. So maybe you can give us a couple of your thoughts about why you started laughing.
That'd be super rich. I mean, Mitt, I don't know about some people may be too rich, you want to give a lot of this money away just for reasons of self-defense.
Well, hey, we've seen the Pineapple Fund, right? We've seen the Pineapple Fund already.
I think there should be more. We should have more. We should have like a Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and we really should, for multiple reasons, not just for selfless reasons and for showing off reasons, but also for selfish reasons of just like, it's kind of interesting. It is related to like, why is the spinning off of a fork? Why is that such a good idea? Well, it keeps everyone. It's a good kind of compromise. It says like, we can keep a lot of these people inside the group, and if you just have to disagree with one thing, so what I'm trying to say is we want to make it easier for people to, you don't want to be like a jerk about this. So you just want to like make this a little easier. There should be that would be very great. I think it would be really, really effective. Actually, I like the Bill and Melinda Gates Fund, the Pineapple Fund idea. I don't know if we should keep calling it the Pineapple Fund, or we should start competing funds, or what's going on with.
Well,
that.
I think
that's great.
I definitely think we should have more. I think we're going to have more, Paul. I really think we are. As more and more, as the Bitcoin price rises and more people become more and more wealthy, I really think this is what I always thought. This is what partially keeps Bitcoin anti-fragile, is as more and more people who love and protect and want to protect Bitcoin become more and more wealthy. Right, they of course are incentivized to use more and more of their power to protect Bitcoin, and so I think that we're going to see a lot of that replay in the form of things like the Pineapple Fund, where our people are just donating money to all sorts of different things, to maybe like a foundation, and all that stuff is coming. Again, guys, it's really, really early days, so we'll have to see. But Daniel, did you have anything else left on this topic or comment on this conversation so far?
No, except I think it is a great idea to give Bitcoin to charity, and I do want to plug that you can, even without a big crypto fund for it, you can donate right now crypto to a lot of Bitcoin and Ethereum to a lot of charities. And if you start a Fidelity charitable donor advised fund, you can very tax efficiently donate Bitcoin or Ethereum, maybe Litecoin, anything Litecoin, to essentially any charity that you want, any 501c3. So I highly recommend doing that.
Very, very cool. All right, guys, I think we can move on to the next topic here. Let's see. Before we do that, if you guys can just give us a thumbs up. It really helps us get into more people's feeds and help spread the video more and more. And please, if this is your first time, or if you guys are new here, please subscribe to us down at the bottom. Let's see here. I think we're going to go ahead and see what time. Yeah, we still got enough. Well, yeah, I guess we can just. Let's see here. I think we're going to go ahead and go into the Ivy topic, actually, to talk about that right now. But before I do that, I do want to just talk a little bit about the huge amount of development and things that's going around with SegWit and with Lightning and with atomic swaps. I mean, more and more merchants are accepting SegWit. are implementing SegWit, and more merchants are accepting live mainnet transactions, like what we've seen with Bitrefill and TorGuard. I got links to those in the show. Highly recommend you guys check that out. And more companies implementing SegWit, like BTC.com, and a couple other companies. And what's really cool is that Alex Bosworth, I have a link to this as well in the show notes, is that he created something called ZigZag, which is this podcasting platform where you can tip and pay people for the podcast with Lightning. So again, just so much Lightning, so much work being done around Lightning right now. I have a bunch of these links into the show notes. I recommend everybody check this out. It's really awesome. I just wanted to just give, again, all the Lightning teams a shout out. All you guys over there doing so much great work, and all the people experimenting with Lightning, all the people creating Lightning wallets. I mean, this is just taking off more and more, and I'm just so excited to see all this kind of stuff. And I will continue to keep reporting this to you guys, to keep sharing more and more of these this progress with Lightning, because this is going to be really big this year, I think. So without further ado, let's go ahead and then go to the next topic then, guys. So what I want to talk about now, in addition to Lightning, is smart contracts over Bitcoin. So we've seen the launch recently of RSK on the mainnet, and now we're looking at something called Ivy here with Dan Robinson. I want to introduce this product to you guys. It's really awesome. It is called Ivy, and I'm going to let Daniel talk about it and introduce it and things like that. But this is really, it gets a little bit technical, but this is really important stuff, guys, because we're going to see more and more advanced smart contracts on Bitcoin this year with programs and products like Ivy and with RSK. I really think that's going to be huge this year. There's going to be more and more people using it. And this is powerful stuff because, of course, Bitcoin has its multi-sig smart contract, right, which is kind of, in my opinion, the only real smart contract out there, the multi-sig. But this is really important stuff that we're going to check out because, again, Ethereum and these other platforms, they're kind of ahead of the game, right, ahead of Bitcoin as far as their tools go. So unfortunately, their platforms are lacking in security and immutability and various other things like that, right? But their tools are becoming more and more solid. And so I'm really excited for people like Daniel here to create these tools like Ivy that kind of will hopefully catch Bitcoin up to these more advanced tools. And because that way, if we can do that, guys, and have the most advanced tools on the most secure platform, then that is a win-win for everybody. So without further ado, Daniel, please tell us a little bit about Ivy and maybe even kind of the history of how it got started first. Start with that.
Absolutely. So I think what you hit the nail on the head there, describing it as a tool. So Ivy is a tool for writing Bitcoin script. It's a tool for writing smart contracts that can run on Bitcoin. And what that means, and in contrast to something like Rootstock, is there's nothing technically that you can't do, that you can do with Ivy that you couldn't do with just writing Bitcoin script, running it on the Bitcoin network. Ivy's built to be run on the Bitcoin network without any changes to the protocol. And it's meant just to make it easier to write these kind of scripts and these combinations of scripts. And to work with Bitcoin smart contracts. So Ivy comes from. So I'm very interested in Bitcoin, but I even come from maybe more of an Ethereum background. And one thing that I really like about the Ethereum community and about Ethereum is the ability to sort of do permissionless innovation on top of it. So this isn't just about writing applications. This is about doing state channels on top of it. This is about doing cross-chain interoperability. Once they've got other features, they can you'll be able to do things like build better anonymity features on top of it. Whereas in Bitcoin, a lot of technical development has to happen at the protocol layer, partly because some features are missing, but really again they've added some fantastic features for that, like time locks. It's just very hard for anyone who's not like sort of a low-level protocol engineer to build protocols like this. So Ivy is targeted kind of first and foremost at protocol developers, at people trying to build things. So like people like Paul who are working on stuff like sidechains or drive chains or Lightning Network, in order to make it easier to build those and to teach those. So part of what I'm focused on right now is using Ivy to try to teach how the Lightning Network works and how to express these Lightning Network contracts and the hash time lock contracts that are used to power it in terms of Ivy, in order to make it a little easier for developers to sort of learn that and to try to contribute to it. Because right now I think there's a serious shortage of people who can do protocol development, and I wouldn't even count myself necessarily among that, because it's an extremely technical, difficult field. and just easing the on-ramp onto that and making it easier for people to work on that on Bitcoin, I think would be a huge help for that. So that's sort of the hope with Ivy.
Yeah. So just a quick recap. Awesome. And just a quick recap. So this Ivy program, this IDE, basically allows you to easily write these Bitcoin smart contracts and these Bitcoin scripts. It allows you to be able to with this tool, like everything when you compile, I'm losing my train of thought here. When you export, there's the code that it creates is no different than actual raw Bitcoin scripts. So there's nothing like special about this. What's really great is it makes it easier to combine these things, to combine these basic building blocks, right? That make up Bitcoin, like time lock verify and things like that. So it's just really, really cool because people can, they look at the Bitcoin scripts, right? And they at first you look at it and you're like, every transaction is a script. And you're like, what the heck? And then you start, that doesn't quite make sense. So this protocol development is just super, super, super hard because it's just super, super niche. I mean, these people that work on this type of stuff is not your regular JavaScript developer, right? This is very, 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 very difficult engineering, very specialized. I like to use the word very specialized engineering. And so to have tools like this, to be able to just throw together a few scripts real quick with this IDE, where that would take you way longer before, is just absolutely amazing. So I'll just let you continue, Dan. I just wanted to break that down to let people know that it allows you to create these complex scripts really simply.
That's right. So if you want to try it out with the viewers, you can go to ivylang.org. That's ivy-lang.org. And so that's the Ivy Playground, which allows you to create, to write your own Bitcoin smart contract templates, and then create simulated contracts and try spending them with different arguments. So right now, there's a few sample contracts that are listed there. And what I've been really focused on is about working on sort of expanding that capability in order to be able to express more sophisticated things like the Lightning Network. And I think that's what you're saying there is exactly right, that it's really about being able to think at a higher level of abstraction. Like if you have to, it's not, honestly, it's not rocket science to convert an Ivy script to a Bitcoin script. It's not necessarily really rocket science to read a Bitcoin script. But if you're trying to see, okay, I've got these two outputs and they've got these different scripts, it's very hard to figure. And then here's this protocol now for combining them and for pre-signing transactions. It's very hard to really sort of keep that all in your head, and it'd be the same like if you were trying to build a modern web browser in assembly code. It's something that it's needlessly sort of putting challenges for yourself. So I'm really interested in language design. That's what I work on at Chain is on Ivy, which was originally developed as a smart contract language for our own platform. And I got interested because I think I'm really interested in Bitcoin script and smart contracts and Bitcoin and protocols like the Lightning Network. And it was just hard even for me to understand it without having to rewrite these in some way that made it simpler. So to lower the barriers to entry for that, I think is an important task.
Absolutely. Very, very, very important. Let's go with Francis real quick and just kind of get some of your thoughts on Ivy so far and the discussion so far.
Yeah, so when I saw Ivy, come out the news a few weeks or a few months ago, I think. But I looked at the website this morning for this, and it's kind of one of those things where I'm really jealous, and I wish we had kind of done that. And this is exactly the kind of stuff that I absolutely love. So I looked at the Ivy Playground, and immediately it kind of reminded me of what Bitcore had done earlier. So Bitcore today, which was BitPay Stack, is not what it was once, but when they came out, it was this hugely easy to deploy and use like kind of JavaScript stack for web developers, which made it super easy to kind of do payment channels, to create invoices, to kind of create browser-side wallets and all that kind of stuff. So it's really important to understand, like at Builds, our developers are good web developers, but they don't have that much experience in Bitcoin, and a lot of the time, because it's kind of really difficult because you need to build all these custom components yourself. You kind of end up outsourcing all the work to like third parties, right? So this is the same. Not a lot of companies have their own. A lot of companies have third-party APIs, right, to tell them that they receive money from the blockchain. A lot of companies, they'll use wallets, hosted wallets, to do these complicated scripts and multi-sigs because they're not sure that they can do that themselves, just because it's very complicated. So stuff like Ivy, I mean, I really like it. For me, it's kind of stuff like like Bitcoin.js, those really popular libraries that allow developers to start to build some apps. I think it's just a great product, and really excited to actually start looking at it. And there's a huge need for this in the market. So this comes at a really good time. Actually, I was in January 2017. I wrote like a big article on how SegWit was gonna make 2017 Bitcoin's best year, and I think I've been thinking for the last 3 months like 2018 is going to be the year of smart contracts on Bitcoin. For many reasons. The first reason is that I've been pushing a message which is getting some traction, which is, a smart contract is a programmable transaction whose redemption conditions are held by distributed consensus escrow. So I like to break it down for people so that I can think about smart contracts as, technically a Bitcoin transaction is a smart contract because, the redemption condition is whoever has, it can show me the signature, will be able to redeem the funds. You kind of build on that. People start to understand that you can actually build some really sophisticated smart contracts in Bitcoin if you're able to manage all these different complicated conditions and all these complicated outputs, which are redeemed. The outputs are redeemed according to the script. And the fact that people had all these tools to build on Ethereum out of the box, these junior developers that could kind of whip up smart contracts over a hackathon and impress everybody. If they can kind of do that on Bitcoin, I mean that's just really good. There's also a lot of stuff coming into Bitcoin which allows more smart contracts. Obviously, SegWit is one, but there's Mast, which is coming. Merkleized abstract syntax trees, which could be coming. Simplicity is a language developed by Blockstream. You got Rootstock, you got drive chains, you got all sorts of stuff. And I think it's going to be a pretty good year for that. So I'm pretty excited. And to some degree, I mean, Lightning Network is the world's most sophisticated and advanced smart contract, right? In a sense, it's just this huge kind of architecture of smart contracts talking to each other. So the components of Lightning are time lock transactions, multisig, and others, which are the basic smart contracts. So I mean, I just like the way that this whole thing is evolving. And speaking of Lightning and tools and stuff like that, I just want to Lightning. The expectations are really high, and I mean, Lightning still has a lot of. So I started working on Bill's Lightning stack this week, and we got a really excellent engineer. And there's some stuff missing in Lightning still, so we're gonna have to be a little bit patient. I know we're seeing all these implementations go live, but I mean it's still very early stage. And I think what we're going to see evolving in Lightning, emerging in Lightning, is kind of like the same stuff that Chain has done with Ivy. Is going to be these tools which allow you to kind of these middleware stacks, which allow you to manage multiple channels, to whip up Bitcoin nodes, Lightning nodes, to kind of with like a single API, basically a single endpoint or a single framework, do all sorts of interesting things. And as long as we're doing that really easy for the developers that are really upstream in the project, we're going to get a lot of cool apps. One thing that I noticed is that a lot of the kind of startups, they just start to be kind of hackathon projects or that are quickly whipped up together. And then people see that there's traction, and then you have, an Ethereum backend. You're kind of stuck with that. That's kind of how you launch, and it's hard to switch. Once you've started with Hyperledger or R3 or Corridor or Fabric or Ethereum, it's kind of hard to switch to Bitcoin. So the earlier we can get Bitcoin people using Bitcoin smart contracts using stuff like Ivy or all these other frameworks, the more likely that they're going to stick to Bitcoin long term. So obviously that's a good thing.
Yeah, it's important to note that these other platforms like R3 and what was the other one that you mentioned? Hyperledger and R3. These types of platforms. I mean, it's important to understand that.
Fabric, Yeah,
and it's important to understand that these guys decided, that Bitcoin wasn't good enough, right? So, or wasn't at the state that they wanted it. So they went to go and build something else. And that, that's all fine and good and everything. But look, Bitcoin is still here and it's still growing. And so people that are working on Bitcoin, making it the platform to be on, that's what I really try to bring onto the show. That's what I really try to bring attention to. Because look, yes, anybody can go and create their own Hyperledger. Great, get some VC funding, millions of dollars. Okay, cool. But look, Bitcoin is the permissionless, the true permissionless, open, borderless, decentralized network here that we want to work with, that we want to build everything on top of. We don't want to build everything on top of Hyperledger or R3 or some centralized thing, right? We want to build as much infrastructure as possible over Bitcoin. And so that's these types of tools is what's going to allow that to happen. And again, we're still behind. Bitcoin is absolutely difficult to work with. I mean, it really is. But it's because it's built by cypherpunks. It's built by people who did not get paid, right? This is all built by volunteers. And so we are maturing more and more. But again, Dan Robinson, I mean, he pretty much had to volunteer. Like, he thought about this idea and, he made it happen. He made it execute. There was no big, huge company. He didn't go out and get a bunch of VC money, right? Right, Daniel? He didn't launch an ICO just for Ivy, I mean, right?
Sure, yeah. But I mean, to be clear, so I do work at a company which, has a private blockchain platform called ChainCore, and I did actually get a bunch of support from the company to work on Ivy, and they've always been extremely supportive of working on Ivy, targeting Bitcoin. And it's something, I think, because it's something that we really believe that programmable value is an important part of this. So again, this is I don't want to take more of the credit. And there are coworkers of mine also who've also contributed a lot to building the Ivy playground and Ivy and making it what it is. But that said, I think it's that comes from a desire to help the community, and whether it comes from individual contributors or open source contributors, or whether it comes from companies or startups that just really care about the space, I think it's very important to say, like a lot of this stuff, it's Lightning Network hasn't had an ICO. It's very hard to sort of build something like that these days, even with, again, this may be the best open source monetization model that has ever existed. And there's still sort of challenges within this space. It's a lot better, I think, in some communities where open source is dramatically underfunded, like web development. But I think it's something that we depend on a few companies. Same with Bitcoin Core. I mean, if it wasn't for Blockstream and Chaincode, I don't know what Bitcoin Core development would be right now. So it really does. I think you should give credit to the companies that support this.
Absolutely. I mean, that's a great point. I mean, companies like Blockstream that went out and decided to get funding so they could continue to build out this infrastructure. I mean, that is great. That's what we try to praise. It's just, I guess I was trying to talk about a lot of these ICOs that are like, they have this idea of like reprogramming all these new protocols and just redoing everything and like go out and get an ICO for it and then expect it to change the world like that. That's not, you have to kind of work with what we have, and we have a huge community of Bitcoin. And again, what's just so different about Bitcoin is that it really is decentralized. It really, really, really is. And because of that, that's what makes everything so difficult and so challenging, including the engineering, the trying to get changes put in there, the governance, all sorts of this stuff. And that's what makes it, for a lot of people, that's what makes it great. That's what makes it real. That's what makes it actually decentralized. And a lot of people who are kind of used to the centralized development models, they don't really like that, right? They say that we need more governance. But look, with various companies like Chaincode, Blockstream, all of these companies, the truth is that we all work together. It's one big, huge community, and it is truly decentralized, at least in my opinion, the only real decentralized protocol at scale. So we'll go with Paul. We have to still hear from Paul on his thoughts on Ivy so far. Go ahead, Paul.
Well, I think it's super cool. I really enjoyed it a lot. I like the structure. I like the way it has this stuff set up where there's these contracts and there's these clauses and these claims on things. I think that structure is great. There's a great emphasis on errors, which I think is super smart, because we had that with the DAO and we had that with the Parity wallet. And so anyone who says, so like Dan was saying before, oh, it doesn't really do anything because it's just going to translate this thing into script. And see, that's not really the point. The point is that his project he was trying to say his project, sucks and stuff and be really humble, but his project's really awesome. In fact, is the truth, because what is the difference between, I mean, you'd think that just writing the spec, see, I'm like kind of more of an architecture, high level guy. I like to sort of like, this is what this thing should do. And you'd think like the code is just a more specific version of that, right? But we all know how there are horrible errors are introduced, when you just try to make the human idea version into the like computer understandable version. So I actually think the emphasis is wrong. It's always described, Ivy is being described as like something that makes it easier to write Bitcoin script, but I think it's really more two-way than that. it should. I almost think it would be more fun if I could, because right now, if you go to like some random transaction on blockchain.info or whatever, some block explorer, and then you can click on like show scripts in Coinbase, but it doesn't really explain very much. Like if you didn't already know what was going on, you would have absolutely no idea what it meant. And even most of the time, it just looks like nonsense. And I think it's almost more fun to look at transactions that are real and have them parsed backwards and then say like, oh, look, here's the explanation for what's going on. So I think it should really, and I don't think it should go more that, I think the emphasis should be both ways. It should just be like something that just translates between the two. But what Dan said was the perfect word, which is the word explain. That is what it does, and that is the difference. And explanations are what science is about. And how can you do any R&D when people have no idea what on earth people are working on? Like, what is check sequence verify doing? You know, what is this script? It looks like nonsense. You're just typing like 6, push X number of bytes to the stack. You're just like, what the heck? Like it sounds crazy. There's an alt stack, but it's never used except one time it is, and then it's like it's so confusing and weird. And a lot of people want to show off and say that they understand everything and they're so smart, and they certainly have a very persuasive confidence up until the moment that the Parity wallet locks all of their money, hundreds of millions of dollars away forever. And that's just not the way professionals do things. Professionals do use like an IDE, and that's what this is, and it's really great. And I think it's super cool. Let me see, look at my notes, see if I forgot anything. Oh yeah, like Lightning Network. Yeah, the idea that you would want an explanation. Lightning Network is very difficult to understand. When you read the paper, it's explained very well, but lots of stuff accumulates. So they describe, okay, this is a payment that goes through if there's a hash. If you reveal R such that it hashes to H. So you know H and then you don't know R. And if someone says R, it goes through. You're like, okay, that's sort of complicated, but good. And then you move on to like, okay, 2 people put money in. And then sometimes it goes one way if there's a hash. And then and then there's another layer on that. Okay, there's 2 different versions of the transaction at once, and only one of them is needed. Oh, okay, but then there's like an escape valve. So it's just like more and more stuff is built on. So something like this could be really, really, really helpful. All the templates, I think, would be really great if, you know, there's a really good logic for saying, okay, we know that this thing is a hash locked contract, and we know that this thing, when you have a hash locked contract and this other thing, okay, now we know that this is a Lightning funding or transaction or a rollover, Lightning rollover. And then people could you could have like little explanations for these things, and they could be like real words that actual human beings can understand. Because how can you do R&D the way it is? This is something that I don't like about Bitcoin, which is that the progress is so fast that it's very easy to get people disenfranchised. And I just mentioned earlier the rebase. You know, it's so much effort, and you know, the documentation in Bitcoin just sucks. It's so bad, and people try so hard to make it. I don't want to disparage all this effort that people put in, but Bitcoin is very difficult to understand. I agree with Francis completely. We have this kind of scam on the smart, and we have this sort of scam in the smart contracts discourse, the public conversation that, you know, Ethereum does smart contracts but Bitcoin does not. That is just a function of the fact that people think that they can write in Python, so they can write in Serpent, so they whip this thing up in a hackathon, as you say, and they think that they are working with blockchain technology, but in reality, they just wrote Python. It has nothing to do with this at all. So there's so much confusion and stuff that's like it's all tied together, and this is a great project, I think. So I think, I think there should be more emphasis on bilateral. It should be like, you should be able to just paste in a transaction ID, and then this thing should explain to you what happened in it. I think that would be really cool. I think it's an awesome project. I really look forward to more people installing it and improving it and talking about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a lot of developers these days, you know, are used to just these very, very complex and complicated IDEs, like, you know, Visual Studio, where we just got all this information. I mean, I got on the side of Visual Studio, if you look at the I forget what the title is now, but just huge stacks and blocks of information and constant things being updated and live and all this kind of craziness. You know, this is what people are kind of used to, all of this advanced, very, very mature tools and things like that. And so, yeah, we are far from that in the Bitcoin ecosystem, which is why tools like Ivy is just so very important. And I really hope that people, like Paul said, improve upon it, continue to make it more advanced, continue to mature it. And absolutely, Lightning is just, Lightning and Bitcoin is difficult to understand. And that's why I have this amazing Lightning infographic in the show notes that I hope everybody checks out. It's just really important because as more and more, as time goes on, we are going to understand this more and more. There's going to be less FUD. We're going to realize that, okay, well, Bitcoin can do smart contracts, probably even better than and more secure than Ethereum, and that it is early days. There's so much stuff we still need, documentation, tools, and things like that. So I just try to bring, these types of people on that are building these things, and hope that we can get more and more attention to it. But guys, thanks so much for joining us. That was an amazing topic. I really hope that people check this out. Check out the link to Ivy. All the links are in the show notes, guys. It's going to be really, really amazing. Does anybody else have anything to add on this before we close it up? Francis did. Go ahead, Francis.
Yeah, so I'm just going to do a quick disclaimer that we're not paid by Ivy or Chain. So people that listen are just going to think we're just chilling because we're giving you such a good time. But I was at the Amsterdam Bitcoin conference in 2014. Chain was there. Chain's like a hugely infrastructure company. I mean, it's been there for a long time. I actually used your API before it got the Explorer API before it got shut down. I was really sad about that. But my question is regarding the institutional consulting that you're doing, because I see your educational tool, and to me it's like, oh, this is exactly what my consulting firm did when we started to do institutional consulting, is build all those tools, because we are kind of selling Bitcoin as the underlying platform. And when I wrote my blog post on SegWit, one of the things I was kind of predicting is that over the next year, the kind of institutional consulting and integration of blockchain, a lot more firms we're gonna be convinced that Bitcoin is the underlying platform that they want to build on. So can you kind of tell us at Chain, did you build Ivy because there was demand from financial institutions and kind of large clients to use Bitcoin as the underlying blockchain for their blockchain proof of concept and projects? Was there demand by clients, or was it just out of your personal interest?
So it's sort of a complicated question. It's not. I can't talk about parts of it, but we did. I mean, so Ivy, when I started at the company, Ivy already existed in sort of an early form for our. So that was about a year and a half ago for our platform for Chain Core, which is the blockchain platform that we partner with financial institutions to use. The building Ivy for Bitcoin is more of a, I guess you could call it a passion project, or you could say it's more about sort of a long-term goal. We just think that there should be that there are better ways to program value. There are better ways to build financial applications than to do it either in sort of this very low-level arcane system that like Bitcoin Script is using, in this very really sort of buggy, not particularly well-designed language Solidity that is in Ethereum, or also in the legacy financial system, in often English, or in contracts, or in just like embedded into these really phenomenally complicated systems. We think that the ability that, so this is really sort of goes out of a research and development goal of ours, which is to make value programmable and to write sort of a good programming language for writing these kind of agreements and these kind of and these kind of operations that control value. So I'd say again, like it's Bitcoin. The Ivy for Bitcoin is open source. Will always be open source. Isn't what you see is sort of the most well developed version of it. But Ivy sort of as a whole, I think fits into our goal of making sort of just a good language. And yeah, the goal with Bitcoin, honestly, is I think the more people sort of start to get used to this this language and learn it, the better sort of the reputation of, say, the UTXO model for smart contracts, which I think is sort of a fantastic and underrated model, will be. And as well as I think thinking about these principles about safety and language design that Ivy really tries to embody. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. Thanks, man.
Awesome. So great discussion, guys. Great topics. Please check out all the links we have in the show notes. There's a quite a few of them for this week. So thanks, guys, so much again for joining. Thanks for everybody in the chat. Thanks for the conversation in the chat. Thanks so much to our guests for joining us. As Paul mentioned, we don't get paid by anybody to do this. Chain didn't pay us to feature Dan here today. No, this is all community driven by you guys. So thanks so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. We had over 800 people at the peak there. So great times. Had a lot of good discussion. Let's go ahead and find out where we can find out more information about our panelists. We'll start with Paul. Paul, where can we find out more about you?
You should follow me on Twitter at Truthcoin, TruthCoin. Or you can visit drivechain.info to learn more about DriveChain. Super awesome project that's even better than the Lightning Network. Gasp! What? Did he just say that? Yes, he did.
Say what?
They're both pretty awesome. Maybe they're both tied.
You bet. No, they're
completely different, which is really cool. They're both awesome but different, and they help each other. In fact, we didn't get to talk about the atomic swaps, but it's atomic swaps is right in with both of them. It's just super cool.
Absolutely.
Anyway,
Lightning, atomic swaps, drive chains, smart contracts, people. This is Bitcoin. This is the real Bitcoin. This is what's coming to Bitcoin. It's going to be so powerful, and we are all very, very, very excited. So thanks again, Paul. Let's go to Francis. Francis, where can we find out more about you?
Yeah, follow me on Twitter at Francis Pouliot, on Medium, and my websites are bills.com with a Y, BYLLS.com, and catalaxy.com.
Awesome. Guys, check out those websites. This is Francis. He is an entrepreneur in the Bitcoin space, so he has lots of great information, as you guys can see, about lots of insider information about the space. Really great. Daniel, thanks so much for joining, man. We really appreciate you sharing your products, and I really hope that more people check it out. Where can we find out more about you and Ivy? Sure.
So yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Dan Robinson, and you can check out the Ivy Playground at ivy-lang.org. You can also find all the source code for Ivy for Bitcoin on GitHub. You can go to my GitHub, which is github.com/Dan Robinson, or you can go to the Ivy Lang organization on GitHub, which is ivy-lang, github.com/ivy-lang.
Yes, sir. So guys, check that out. Or you can just Google Ivy and Bitcoin, and I guarantee you'll find it, because that's what I did. That's the best way to find it. So guys, thanks so much for joining us. We had another amazing show, so much good discussion. We really hope you guys enjoyed it. We will be back here, of course, next Sunday at 12 p.m. Pacific, talking more about Bitcoin. So guys, thanks so much for joining us again. Until next time, please keep talking Bitcoin. We'll see you guys later.